She blended into the background so perfectly that people often forgot she was even there. At the upscale restaurant where she worked, invisibility wasn't just common, it was expected. The place was filled with polished marble floors, soft golden lighting, and customers who spoke in confident tones shaped by money. Expensive watches flashed with every gesture. Laughter echoed, but it rarely reached the staff. And Grace Turner? She was just another waitress. She moved quietly between tables, balancing trays with precision, offering polite smiles that felt more like a routine than a choice. Most guests didn't look up when she spoke. To them, she wasn't a person with a story, just part of the service. But her story was anything but ordinary. Just 3 years earlier, Grace had been living a completely different life. She had been studying linguistics at one of the most prestigious universities in the world. Her professors admired her. Her research stood out. She had a rare gift. She didn't just learn languages, she understood them. 7 languages, fluently. Her future had been mapped out with promise: fellowships, academic recognition, a career that could have taken her anywhere. She was building something meaningful. Then everything changed. Her mother fell seriously ill. The diagnosis came like a storm, sudden, overwhelming, and impossible to ignore. Hospital visits replaced lectures, bills replaced books, and without hesitation, Grace made a decision most people wouldn't have the strength to make. She left everything behind. No graduation, no career launch, no second thoughts. She returned home, trading her dreams for responsibility. The life she had worked so hard for was packed away into memories she rarely allowed herself to revisit. Now her world was smaller. Long shifts, heavy trays, tired feet, quiet nights filled with worry. And a question that followed her everywhere. Did anyone even see her anymore? That Thursday night felt no different, until the doors opened. A man walked in who carried the kind of presence that made people turn their heads without realizing it. Wealth had a way of announcing itself, and he wore it like armor. Confident, loud, untouchable. He scanned the room like he owned it, and then his eyes landed on Grace. In that moment, something shifted. Not for her, for him. Because he had just found someone he thought he could play with. And Grace had no idea that within the next few minutes, her entire life was about to change. What happens when someone invisible refuses to stay that way, even for just one moment?
The man didn't just sit down, he took over the space. Everything about him demanded attention. The way he leaned back in his chair, the careless confidence in his voice, even the slight smirk that never quite left his face. The woman sitting across from him looked elegant, but uneasy, like he already knew how the evening might unfold. Grace approached their table like she did every other, calm, professional, composed. "Good evening," she said softly, notepad ready. That's when it started. Instead of placing a normal order, the man began speaking in what sounded like a foreign language, but something felt off. The words were clumsy, the pronunciation exaggerated. It wasn't authentic, it was performance. A bad one. He mixed sounds, gestures, and fragments of words as if trying to mimic an accent. It might have been funny in another context, but here it carried something sharper. Mockery. His voice grew louder with each sentence, making sure nearby tables could hear. A few people turned. Some smiled awkwardly. Others simply watched. "You understand me, right?" he said, stretching his words just enough to make the insult obvious. The room shifted. Grace stood still, holding her notepad. She could feel eyes on her from every direction. This wasn't just about taking an order anymore. It was a test. A familiar one. In moments like this, people expected her to shrink, to apologize, to play along, to disappear just a little bit more. That's what she had always done, because staying quiet was easier, safer. But something inside her didn't feel quiet this time. Maybe it was exhaustion. Maybe it was everything she had sacrificed. Or maybe, just maybe, it was the realization that she had already given up too much to keep giving away her voice too. The man leaned forward, amused by his own act. His girlfriend let out a nervous laugh, unsure whether to join in or stop him. The tension built slowly, like a storm waiting to break. Grace had a choice: stay invisible, or remind the world who she used to be. Her grip tightened slightly on the notepad, and then she looked him straight in the eyes. For the first time that night, she didn't look like someone trying to disappear. She looked like someone about to be heard. What if the person you're mocking understands far more than you think and decides to prove it?
The silence didn't happen all at once. It crept in, table by table, conversation by conversation, until the entire restaurant seemed to pause without realizing why. Grace spoke, but not in English. Her voice was calm, steady, and unmistakably fluent as she responded in perfect Italian. Not just conversational, but refined, precise, and beautifully structured. The kind of fluency that doesn't come from apps or textbooks, but from deep study and real understanding. The effect was immediate. The man's smirk faded. Grace didn't stop. She translated his order, gently correcting the mistakes he didn't even realize he had made. What he thought sounded impressive had actually been a mess of misused words and awkward phrasing. In fact, part of what he said carried an unintended and slightly embarrassing meaning. A few nearby guests caught on. Subtle smiles appeared. Grace continued, now recommending dishes and wine pairings with effortless confidence, her tone still professional, never mocking. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't attack. She simply revealed the truth. That made it even more powerful. From the kitchen doorway, even the chef paused, drawn by the unexpected fluency flowing across the dining room. The atmosphere shifted completely. Moments ago, Grace had been invisible. Now she was the center of attention, and not because she demanded it, but because she earned it. The man's face darkened, first red, then tight with frustration. He hadn't expected this. Not from her. Not from someone he had already decided didn't matter. For a brief moment, it looked like he might laugh it off, pretend it didn't affect him. But people like him rarely accept being exposed so easily. And when embarrassment hits, it often turns into something else. Something louder, something uglier. He pushed his chair back suddenly, the sharp scrape echoing across the floor. Every eye turned. And then, in a voice designed to take control again, he made an accusation that changed everything. "This woman just stole my wallet." The words landed like a shockwave. Gasps, whispers, confusion. Grace's heart dropped. Because in places like this, truth didn't always win. Power did. And right now, he had plenty of it. When power twists the truth, who dares to stand up? And what happens if someone finally does? The accusation hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. Grace didn't move. She didn't need to defend herself, yet somehow she already felt judged. That was the danger of moments like these. Sometimes the louder voice became the believable one. The man stood tall, confident in the chaos he had created. He pointed, repeating the claim, louder this time. He wanted control back, and this was how he took it. Around the room, people shifted uncomfortably. No one stepped forward. Until someone did. From a quiet corner table, an older man slowly rose to his feet. He didn't rush, he didn't raise his voice, but there was something about him, something steady and undeniable, that drew attention without effort. The room turned toward him instinctively. "Before we call anyone," he said calmly, "perhaps you should check your coat pocket." His tone wasn't aggressive. It didn't need to be. The accused man hesitated for just a second, then reached into his jacket. Silence. And then, there it was. His wallet, exactly where it should have been. The shift in the room was immediate. You could feel it, like tension breaking after a long storm. The whispers changed tone. The energy turned. The truth had surfaced. The man tried to recover, mumbling something that didn't quite form into an explanation, but the moment had already slipped out of his control. The older man stepped closer, placing himself subtly between Grace and the accusation. Then he looked at her, really looked at her. And what he said next changed everything. "I remember you." Grace froze. It had been a long time since anyone said those words to her and meant them. He spoke of her past, her research, her brilliance, opportunities she had once been on the verge of receiving, things she thought the world had forgotten. Her eyes filled, not with weakness, but with something deeper. Recognition. For the first time in years, someone wasn't seeing a waitress. They were seeing her. And then, turning back to the man who had caused it all, the older gentleman delivered a quiet sentence that carried enormous weight. A decision. Final. Unshakable. And devastating. What happens when the right person witnesses the wrong moment and decides to change someone's fate forever? The man left quickly. No arguments, no recovery. Just silence and the quiet collapse of the image he had tried so hard to maintain. The woman who had accompanied him stayed behind for a moment, long enough to offer a sincere apology to Grace before walking away on her own. And just like that, the moment was over. But its impact was only beginning. Weeks passed, then months, and Grace's life no longer looked the same. She wasn't parrying trays anymore. She wasn't forcing polite smiles for people who didn't see her. Instead, she sat in a bright office overlooking the city, a space filled with purpose, ideas, and possibility. The older man had kept his word. He offered her an opportunity, not out of pity, but out of recognition. He saw her for who she truly was, and more importantly, who she could still become. Grace stepped into that role with quiet determination. Her work focused on something deeply personal, creating opportunities for others who had been forced to choose between survival and their dreams. Scholarships, programs, support systems. Things she once needed, things she now had the power to provide. Her mother's health improved too. With proper care and support, recovery became possible. The weight that once felt unbearable slowly lifted. But the greatest change wasn't the job, or the money, or even the stability. It was something far more powerful. Grace found her voice again. Not the careful, hidden version, but the one that spoke with confidence, clarity, and purpose. The one she had buried when life demanded too much from her. One afternoon, her mother visited her office. She looked around, taking it all in. The impact, the growth, the life her daughter had rebuilt from almost nothing. "I'm proud of you," she said softly. And this time, when Grace smiled, it was real. Because she understood something now that she hadn't before. Being unseen doesn't mean being unimportant. And sometimes, all it takes is one moment, one decision, to remind the world who you really are. So the question is, if your moment comes, will you stay invisible, or will you finally be seen?